Hello, everyone. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Good morning. It's morning for me. Uh, so because our world always revolves around us, it's morning. It's for me, it's morning. Um, that was a funny little thing just to preface what I'm going to talk about today. In the last video, I talked about the Vimalakirti Sutra. I'm still having a little trouble pronouncing it. um, as being a really, really good fundamental example about how Buddha's teachings uh, read, what is the meaning in the sutras, and I was talking about how to study Buddhism. I'm going to hit on that again today and perhaps do a better job at it that I did in the last one. What I'm going to enter into it with is what I've been reading on Quora and other places. Um, a lot of misconception and confusion about what is samsara. Um, a lot of people seem to think that samsara is basically the earth with us living on it. Or in other words, uh, well, I'm not sure. People seem to perceive samsara as the environment in which we suffer. Again, words are slippery here. The idea, let me just say it this way, the idea seems to be that if you stop suffering, then you leave samsara. That samsara is suffering. It's of the Four Noble Truths. That samsara is, by its nature, uh, a condition of discomfort, disease, sickness, death, birth, blah 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 blah. That's not entirely correct, and I answered somebody today. They asked a very simple question: what's the quickest way to escape samsara? And I have a kind of a dark sense of humor, and I said, well, die. Then I went back and I said, uh, but none of us want that, do we? So, uh, the truth of the matter is, and what spurred me on even further was that there were a lot of responses from Hinayana Buddhists, Theravada Buddhists, talking about arhatship and how in arhatship you is the first stage of practice where you lose your attachments and so suffering goes away and there's that misconception again. So let me just set the record straight about samsara, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to study the Buddhist Sutra, the sermons of Shakyamuni, um, in a modern way, so that we can get more quickly to the meaning. The meaning being what he was trying to teach, not getting lost in the words. And you hear people all the time about talking about repetitions and prose and poetic, and you have to look through and blah blah blah. That's because people are stuck on the words. So I'm going to try to really simplify things without losing uh, the meat, the thing that we are practicing for, the inspirations that we need daily to keep us motivated and to keep us on the right mental track. And that's a clue. So samsara is basically a term that in the time of Shakyamuni and before, but in the time of Shakyamuni, the idea of uh, the human condition being the conditions under which humans manifest. Without those conditions, there's no humans. If there's no humans, there's no earth, there's no universe, there's no matter. This goes through to the core of the Buddhist teachings. So what you have to understand is like mathematics. You can't take a 4-year-old and teach them calculus. Exceedingly rare, I would think. So basically, the way we go through school, private or public, is we learn about numbers, and then we learn about how to add them to each other and subtract them from each other, and then we learn about fractions. And then once we get really well versed in the way we can manipulate numbers and how they represent things in the world, we then can go into algebra, where we can have unknown numbers, knowing their numbers, but not knowing what exactly they are, or they're changing numbers depending on an equation. More sophisticated thinking, but we're still dealing with numbers. However, if we didn't know what numbers were, when we jumped into algebra, we'd be, what's going on? We got numbers and letters and what? So, the same thing is true of the way Buddhism was taught by Shakyamuni. He had to raise the awareness of his disciples to the point where something became within their capacity to understand. And then once they had enough aha moments, he could say, okay, now you know this, discard it, because now you're just going to use it so you can know this. Oh God, more to learn, more school, right? Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're reading the sutra. There's early sutras, there's latter sutras, and they build on each other, even to the point of throwing some away. They're not thrown away literally. They're thrown away as you don't need to focus on this anymore. This isn't the full answer. This is something to help you get to the full answer. All right. So samsara is a term that explains manifestation, all manifestation, because whenever there's manifestation, there's duality, there's individuation, and the moment there's duality, self and other, him and her, that and this, as soon as there's instantiation, there's duality. As soon as there's duality, there's a problem. That's suffering is not really a good word for it, but samsara is a condition of energy that is differentiated matter so that an imbalance, a vibration, a dissonance exists. And humans are born into that, into samsara. But it's a mistake to think that if you get rid of anything that affects you negatively, or that if you suddenly awaken to the truth of non-duality, that you've escaped samsara. Because if you awaken to that truth, how did you awaken to it? You awaken to it as a human. You're still in the individuation of samsara. This is why when you leave Hinayana and the Arhats behind and you start to study about bodhisattva practice and achievement of Buddhahood in your own lifetime in Mahayana Buddhism, you begin to understand that as your mind perceives more clearly the truth of all processes, nose itch, that what you're changing is your mental state. You're still here, you still got fingers and legs, you're still part of samsara, but your perception while in samsara vastly changes. This is critical knowledge. Buddhism is about perception. It's about observable phenomena. It's about what's in your face and how you perceive it. That's what makes Buddhism such a pragmatic practice. It is of the samsaric world. If you're not in the samsaric world, there's no need to practice because you're in Buddhahood. Buddhahood is where we come from and it is where we go back to. This life of instantiation as a human being in the human condition in samsara for us to realize that truth. Make sense? All right. Another way I can illustrate this is, well, first of all, let me stick with the teachings. When in the teachings, Shakyamuni talks about complete awakening, complete Buddhahood, realizing your Buddhahood. What you essentially are is that you have a Buddha mind to perceive everything, including samsara, but you see it as a jeweled, wonderful, gorgeous place. You don't experience suffering because you had a Buddha awakening. But you're still in samsara in a human body. So what are you then called? You are a bodhisattva. When you reach, there are different levels of bodhisattva. When you reach the level of complete Buddhahood without entering into nirvana, in other words, leaving physical form, dying, if you're still here, then you've made a choice as a bodhisattva to help others attain their enlightenment, their awakening, their Buddha nature. Does that make sense? All the while, you're in samsara. You simply don't experience it through the other lenses of lower life conditions. Do you see how accessible this makes Buddhist method, Buddhist practice? This is just more validation that the Buddha was all along trying to tell us that we already have this wisdom. We already have this Buddha nature. We are of it. It is in us. It is through us, around us, and it is where we will be. We're just asleep. We don't get it. It's like, and I see if this example works for you. Imagine that you're born with contact lenses on that color everything with a shade of pink, which would make the whole color spectrum shift, wouldn't it? And somewhere around your teenage years, somebody told you, you don't see the world right. You always color things way off. Things aren't what you think they are. And you're like, what are you talking about? I see everything you see. You don't know pink from shino. It's the way everything looks. You don't know you have contact lenses in coloring everything. And somebody tells you, look, practice this teaching and it will remove the delusions and illusions you have about how the world looks and you will see clearly. Because right now you see everything through rose-colored lenses and you're like, what rose? Pink? What is that? What are you talking about? Everything has a warm tone, a glow. I know what the world looks like. No, you don't. You think you do, but you're looking at the world through the wrong lenses. And you're like, well, I don't know. Okay, well, I'll try it because I always seem to be a little out of sync and have problems with things. Maybe I'm just different. No. You need to clear your vision. Okay, and you practice and you practice and you practice and, you look around and you see a little bit more and understand a little bit more. Everything looks the same color though. And then one day you're practicing and you're practicing and you're practicing and you're so distraught, you're crying, you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? Why am I so convinced there's something wrong with it? And suddenly, whoop, you wipe out the contact lenses and you see them and you go, what the hell is this? Did I just lose? Okay, you were, am I blind? Did I just tear my eyes out? What happened? But then when you clear your eyes from the tears and so forth, oh my goodness, the world is completely different than I thought it was. Was it these things? Oh my God, I would have never thought. Well, this is what awakening is. You've been having this lens you've been going through that's been misinforming you, and you've bought into it over and over. Why wouldn't you? It was the condition you were born in. It was your karma, or some of it, I should say. There are other lenses in there we don't have as easy access to. But it's just an analogy. Think about that. You know, we think we're so smart. We think, I can change my mind. But could you? How deeply, how profoundly could you change your mind had you never found those lenses in your eyes? It's not an easy thing. So what's the quickest way to leave samsara? Die. Because then you won't be in the world of duality. But it's kind of a cold way of looking at it, and a missed opportunity. Because what we'd like to do is realize while we're in this life, while we're in this body, while we're experiencing this incredible life, this precious thing, no matter how much suffering we're dealing with, it's all made in our minds. It's all little stacks of lenses on our mind. And one by one, we need to destroy them. We need to say, that lens, no more. That lens, no more. Until we have no more lenses. Then we see clear. We're still in samsara, but then it's your choice. You go, wow, I really appreciate this life for what I've learned, and I don't want to be here anymore. I don't need to. And so you go. You expire. And you go back into the energy. Or you stay here and you go, dude, let me show you something. And you become excited about helping others realize these contact lenses that they've been wearing on their mind all along, until they too can look at you and go, wow, that's magnificent. Buddhahood is amazing. Being a bodhisattva is reward beyond reward. This is so exciting. So when we study Buddhist sermons, what we have to understand is what he's trying to do is relate to us this person, that God, that mythical, whatever name you want to assign to it. It isn't about the names. It isn't about what they are. It's about how they perceive. When you first fall in love with somebody, it's like every time you look at them, they have a glow about them. Yeah, their color could change to you, especially if later on you guys really have a bad breakup. Suddenly they look totally different to you. You may not even want to look at them. So the sermons, especially as we move into the Mahayana sermons, which are less about didactic, strict learning for the disciples in the monastery so that they can grow their minds and understand algebra or understand calculus. Once that stage is done with and he moves into the later stage, now that you have this capacity to understand, please understand that every one of you sees their own world. We all think we're in the same world, but the world that you see is specifically through your lenses. And until you can strip away those lenses, you will not see the real world as it is, as the jewel manifested golden aura, whatever it is that you need to see in order to be free from all delusion. Pragmatic Buddhism is about living a human life and realizing something much, 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 much greater than the human life. And when you decide to leave this state of conditioned existence, that is when you will leave samsara. Because samsara is the conditioned experience where all these billions of worlds that we hold on to exist. It's the container. I hope that helps. I hope that makes better sense to you. Helps you gain more meaning out of the sometimes tedious sutras. But if it's tedious, you'll notice that the repetitions are usually about different instantiations. Either the person in different life states or several personages from folklore on down to the good doctor in town. They see life through their own lenses, their own perception. Buddhism is a methodology of expanding one's perception in order to cleanse one's perception to find total clarity. Buddhism, in a way, in all the sutras, analyzes different attitudes about things. And attitudes are huge stumbling blocks. They come from the 5 skandhas, right? The aggregates. Study Vasubandhu. Okay. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. That's going to be, if that was a lot of meat for you to digest. And I did it under 25 minutes. Woohoo! That's a big goal for me. I'm a talker. But if you have any questions, please, 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 please note them under this video so that you can educate me and I can help others answer questions that other people have. Even though you think you may have the only one, you may be the only one courageous enough to ask it or in a place to ask it. So share with me, okay? Thank you so much for being a part of my practice. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. By the way, you notice sometimes I'll do this Western thing of putting my hands together. If you read old sutras, you'll see that the people put their palms together and then fold their hands. This is the position. This is too much like I'm asking for something from elsewhere, which is wrong. It's not Buddhism. So I have to remind myself all the time, even after 30 years of practice. I was polluted for the first few because of organizations I was in. But anyway, after enough study, I know that this is the correct position for your hands. But you know what? In the scope of the teachings, what's most important is our dialogue and what you're learning and the meaning of the sutras. So I don't spend a whole lot of time admonishing people for how to put their hands together, as long as they all understand that it's a gesture of appreciation, expectation, and gratitude. And I certainly have that for you guys. Have a great day. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Now I gotta find the pause button. Stop.